Hi guys, your favorite nurse is here, and today we are going to be talking about the small intestine. So, the small intestine, the fact about it is that the length of the small intestine is actually longer 3 times than your own heart, which means you can actually get yourself rolled with what? With the small intestine. And now that is just a simple fact about it. So let's dig deep into this organ and let's see how it works. So yeah. So yeah, welcome back. Now we said we are going to be talking about the what? About the small intestine. Small intestine. And now, to discuss the small intestine, we used to use our what? We used to use our acronym for describing all organ as well. So before taking a look at that, let's talk about the passage of food right from the mouth to the what? To the anus. And that is going to bring about the diagram of the alimentary canal. So let's add a goal. Now, it starts from where? It starts right from the mouth. So let's assume that this mouth is opened this way. So, and then we have the what? We have the esophagus behind it. So this is a sketch. And then into the stomach. And then to the C-shaped duodenum. So from that, we are going to have our large intestine right here. So somewhere around this junction. So that's the appendix. And that's the cecum. Don't worry, we'll be talking about each and every of the structures later on. So this is the transverse colon of the large intestine. So and then we have our what? Have the descending colon, and then we have the S-shaped sigmoid colon, and then we have the what? We have the rectum and the anal canal. So something of this nature. And then continuation of our small intestine right here. That's the sketch. Now, we have other accessory organs as well. So, such as the what? The liver, right here. But I don't want to be giving a more detailed diagram. So, we'll be talking about that later. So, under it, you have the gallbladder. So, the gallbladder right here. We'll be talking about that later. So, now, when you're taking a food, it passes through this place called the esophagus. And from this esophagus, the food is going to pass through 2 sphincters in the esophagus. But let's leave that wire for now. And then to the what? Into the stomach. And from the stomach, the food moves into the what? Into this C-shaped structure. So this C-shaped structure is called the duodenum. Duodenum. And that duodenum is the first part of the what? Of the small intestine. So after that, the food passes into this place. And then absorption occurs into the bloodstream through something called the portal vein. If you want to have a better understanding of this, just go watch my video on liver cirrhosis or the liver itself. Yeah, so you can watch the liver itself. We talked about movement of nutrients from the what? From the small intestine into the portal vein and then to the liver and then outside as well. So after the digestion and absorption of food, the remaining part goes down here right here into the what? Into the second part of the large intestine, of the small intestine rather. So this second part is said to be the what? Jejunum. Jejunum. And from there, from jejunum, it passes into the last part, which is this place, which is the ileum. So the ileum. So this part is called the ileum. That is the last part of what? The last part of the small intestine. And then the food is going to pass through this valve here. We'll talk about it later, don't worry. And then the food ascends through this part of the large intestine. So all this structure like this is the large intestine. So the food is going to move in this direction through the ascending colon right here. Ascending colon, ascending colon. It is called the ascending colon because the food particle is ascending, it's going upward. And now this place is called the transverse colon. The transverse colon. So because it is passing through this transverse plane, we divide the body into up and down. That's why they call it the transverse colon. So I'm going to be digging deep into this while talking about the large intestine. And after that, it passes into the descending colon and then into this S-shaped structure called the sigmoid colon. So from there, the food passes into the rectum and then the canal. So feces. So this is just the passage of food in the what? In the GIT, in the alimentary canal. So the longest part of this tract rather, is this small intestine, which starts from this junction. So it starts from where? starts from this junction. So junction of the stomach. So and it ends right here. So it means everything that I'm showing you right now is what? The small intestine. So all this part are the what? The small intestine. And they're the longest part. I mean, it is the longest part of the what? Of the alimentary tract. And it's about 6 meters. So 6 meters. In some other times they give it 5. So now let's start describing this small intestine, this very small structure. Let's start describing it. So I'm going to bring in a new board as we are going to clean this off, and then we start with the acronym for describing the organ. So this being the what? This being the introduction. But then let me quickly add something right here. Within these C-shaped parts, we have a structure there, and that structure is called the pancreas. The what? The pancreas. So pancreas. So I'll tell you the function later on. And then at this junction, this duct is connected with it right here. Don't worry, I'm going to explain all that later. So let's start describing it. So let's pick it from what? From the DOL, let's just back for it. So stay tuned. Yeah. Yeah, welcome back. Now, talking about the DOL electricity pathway, if we are using that to describe the what? The small intestine. Inside our description, we know we have to have our system, then the color, and the weight. Now, if that be the case, we can start by saying the small intestine is an organ of the what? Of the digestive system. Now, we are going to neglect the color and the weight because they are negligible in this order. And now the next thing is organ regulation. The organ regulation as well, we are going to neglect it as well. On the other way around, you are going to use its extension and where it terminates. So what's the meaning of that? For this organ regulation, you can start by saying it extends from where? From the pyloric of the what? From the pyloric sphincter of the stomach. So if this is the stomach right now, we know that this part, we have the pyloric sphincter there. Pyloric sphincter. Pyloric sphincter. So the small intestine, this is C-shaped duodenum. It starts from here now. So that is the what? That is the duodenum. This is the first part of the what? Of the small intestine. And then the next part of the small intestine is the jejunum. The jejunum. And finally, it terminates at where? At what we call the ileum. So that ileum is connected directly with what? With the large intestine. So a part of the large intestine called the cecum, this part. So if this is the duodenum now, duodenum. So this is the jejunum, jejunum, and this is the ileum. Now, you can say it extends from where? From the pyloric sphincter of the stomach, and then it terminates at this junction. So this junction is called ileocecal valve. Now, what's the meaning of that? The word ileum, that is what constitutes this first part, ileum. And now this cecal, this is C-E. So this cecal is from this first part of the large intestine called the cecum. The C what? The cecum. So the junction, or the valve, or the gate, valve also means a gate, between this ileum and the what? And this cecum is called the ileocecal valve. And that is where, that is the exact place that marks the end of the what? Of the small intestine. That's why we said under this organ evolution, we can't fit anything there. We can change it into extension. You can say the small intestine, it extends from the pylorus of the stomach or from the pyloric sphincter of the stomach and terminates at the what? At the ileocecal junction or ileocecal valve of the small and the large intestine. As simple as that. Now, the next one is what? Is this location. Talking about the location, it is located primarily in the what? In the umbilical region. So add this word, surrounded, this sentence rather, and surrounded by the what? By the large intestine. So listen to that again. For the location, it is located majorly in the umbilical region and surrounded by the what? By the large intestine. From the previous diagram, we realize that the large intestine is what? Is surrounding it. So I'm going to add the large intestine to this diagram. It has to be like this. So you have to add it up like this. So then it surrounds this already. So then, and then it comes down to form the what? The segment colon right here. So the rectum and the what? And the anal canal. So it is surrounding the what? The large intestine is surrounding the small intestine. As simple as that. Now, the next one is the shape. So you neglect the shape as well. Next one is the size. Now, talking about the size of the small intestine. The small intestine is about 6 meters long, or you can use 5 meters long as well. So both are correct. Just always add your what? You what about. So once you put about there, you are correct. Now, the next thing is the structure. Now, to understand the structure, you have to come in with a diagram and some kind of explanations. So for that, I want to clear the board. But before clearing the board, after the structure, using the DOLS recipe for F, we still have our supply, right? So, supply. And supply is talking about the aqua supply, the venous drainage, then the what? Nerve supply. So, and after that, we still talk about the function. So, let's start with the structure now. Let me just clean the board and let's dissect this small intestine. Let's look at the inner part. So, let's see everything that is right there. So, I'll be right back. Yeah, welcome back. Now, talking about the structure of the small intestine. The structure. Now, the first thing I'd like to tell you is that the small intestine is divided into three parts, which means it has three parts. Now, what are the parts of the small intestine? So the first one is called the duodenum. What? Duodenum. And the second part is called the jejunum. And the last part is called the ileum. Now, these guys, they have their own length. So the length for this small intestine is 20, for this duodenum is about 25 centimeter. About what? 25 centimeter. In some textbooks we find 30 centimeter. They are also correct too. So just use your word, your word about. And now the next one is jejunum. This jejunum is about 2 meters long. So if you like, you can use 240 centimeter. So that's correct too. This is according to Aaron Mustafa. So and this is according to Rose and Wilson. So using the ileum is about 3 meter long, according to Rose and Wilson. And according to Aaron, it's about 360 centimeter long. So you can go for any of these right here. So this is what? This is the size. So the sizes of each of the parts of what? Of the small intestine. Now, let's talk about the duodenum now. If you want to talk about duodenum, what are you expected to say? If you want to talk about jejunum, what are you expected to say? If you want to talk about ileum, what are you expected to say? Now, let me say this straight. This jejunum and this ileum, they don't really have something much on them. But this duodenum is where you have to talk about a lot of things. Now, what are those things? Now, let's get started. Let me use this place, although it's not enough for me to make a diagram. But I think we can just clear the board and start afresh. So, we're going to have enough space to do what? To illustrate the diagrams. So, let's just quickly clear the board and we'll talk about the duodenum alone. Now, talking about the duodenum. So, you know that this is your stomach right here. Stomach. And after that, you have the C-shaped duodenum. So this is the C-shaped duodenum. Now, this duodenum is about 25 centimeter long. We've talked about that. And then it is C-shaped structure. You see what? A C-shaped structure. And now, this structure, it connects with another organ. So this C-shaped part, it has another organ. The head of an organ is actually found inside that C-shaped structure. And that organ is called the pancreas. The what? The pancreas. So the pancreas. Now, apart from this pancreas, we have another organ another organ that connects with the small intestine, but not directly, but indirectly. Now, at this junction, we have an organ here called the liver. So the liver. So I'll be drawing the lower part of the liver for us. So let me call it the posterior part of the liver. So this is the posterior part now. Just looking at the back of the liver. So what can you see? You are going to find some kind of structure here called the gallbladder. So the gall what? The gallbladder. So we have a bile duct right there, and then it passes like this. So now at this junction, this gallbladder This gallbladder, it releases bile. So if you don't know anything about this, just check my video on the biliary tract. So you're going to understand this very well. So the bile is going to pass through this place. So this duct is called the common bile duct. Common bile duct. You don't need that while describing your small intestine. But for you to understand it, I must do this. Now it releases bile into this junction. But the bile, the structure, I mean the chemical or the substance that is going to be found at this junction is not only the bile, but it's going to meet up with another what? Another secretion coming from the pancreas. So this is what? The pancreatic secretion. The pancreatic secretions. So the pancreatic secretion and the what? And the bile, they meet at this junction. And this junction is called, because it's coming from the liver. Liver anatomically means hepa. So this junction is called hepato. Now, because this is the pancreas, the secretion of the pancreas, so they used to call this hepatopancreatic. Hepatopancreatic. Now, hepatopancreatic what? Hepatopancreatic ampulla. Ampulla means an empty space or small cavity. So this junction, where the secretion of the liver, called the bile, and the secretion of the pancreatic and the pancreatic secretion rather. So where they meet, this junction is called what? Hepatopancreatic ampulla. And this hepatopancreatic ampulla is guided by a sphincter right here. And this sphincter is called hepatopancreatic sphincter. Hepatopancreatic sphincter. So hepatopancreatic sphincter. So this sphincter, what sphincter means gate. So or valve. So, but it's different from a valve actually. So two different things. So we'll talk about them later. We're talking about our skeletal system. So we're talking about the difference between a valve and what? And a sphincter. Now, this hepatopancreatic sphincter is just like a gate guiding the hepatopancreatic what? Ampulla. As simple as that. So this small intestine, this part of the small intestine, the duodenum, you can start your description by saying it is about 25 centimeters long, comma, and it is a C-shaped structure. So which houses the what? The organ pancreas. Are we getting that? So then you say at the midpoint, you can see at the middle, at the midpoint of what? Of the pancreas is an opening. So this opening now, called the what? Hepatopancreatic ampulla, which is guided by what? A sphincter called the hepatopancreatic sphincter. As simple as that. And then you can stop that. And if you like, you can tell us about this secretion and the bile. So you can say this hepatopancreatic ampulla is responsible for conveying or for transporting the bile coming from the liver, and then the pancreatic secretion coming from the what? Coming from the pancreas. So into the what? Into the small intestine. So when they reach the small intestine, what they do is that they cause digestion. Digest what? Digestion. As simple as that. So carbohydrate, protein, and water, fat. So we're talking about that separately in some other videos. Digestion of carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Now, a quick recap for the small, for the duodenum. You can start by saying it is the first part of the what? Of the small intestine. And then it is about 25 centimeters. And then it is a C-shaped structure which has an opening at its midpoint. And the opening is called hepatopancreatic ampulla. So, you now say this hepatopancreatic ampulla is guided by a sphincter called hepatopancreatic sphincter. If you like, you can also call the sphincter of Oddi. So, the sphincter of Oddi. So, as simple as that. So, that's about the what? About the duodenum. Now, the next thing is the what? Is the jejunum. So, let me just quickly go and talk about the jejunum and the what? And the ileum. Now, let's talk about the jejunum and the ileum. So, we just finished talking about the what? About the C-shaped duodenum, right? So, we just finished talking about the C-shaped duodenum. And after that, this duodenum is connected with the next structure called the jejunum. The jejunum. So, the jejunum is not actually a C-shaped structure. Just for us to understand it, that's why I'm doing that. And we don't have all the board to ourselves. So, the jejunum is the second part. So, if you want to describe the jejunum, just don't give yourself any kind of headache. Just say this. The jejunum is the middle and the second part of the what? Of the small intestine. And after saying that, just say it is about 2 meters long. So all you can say it is about what? 240 centimeter long. So as simple as that. And then you can say it extends from the what? From the duodenum to the what? To the ileum. So ileum is now the what? Is the last part of the what? Of the small intestine. So this structure here is the ileum. As simple as that. So talking about the ileum, now the third one, you can follow the same sequence or order again to describe it. So you can just say the ileum is the third and the last part of the what? And the distal part of the what? Of the small intestine. And after saying that, you can say it's about what? It's about 3 meters long, or you say about 360 centimeter what? Long. And then you say it extends from the what? From the distal part of the jejunum to the what? To this place. So this is the first part of the what? Of the large intestine. So this first part of the large intestine is called the cecum. The C what? The cecum. And now, if that is the cecum, and this one is the ileum, the name of the valve between them, this gate between the ileum and the cecum, is called ileocecal valve. Ileocecal what? Ileocecal valve. That is the valve. Valve means the gate between what? Between the ileum and the what? Cecal. So that is the what? The cecum. As simple as that. And that is that about the what? About the parts of the what? Of the small intestine. Now, the next thing you're supposed to talk about by describing this in an examination condition is the layers of the what? The layers of the small intestine. So we have 4 layers of the what? 4 layers of the small intestine. So the first layer is called the mesentery. So mesentery. And the second one is called the muscle layer. Muscle what? Muscle layer. The next one is called the submucosa. What? Submucosa. Or you call it the submucous layer. And the last one is called the mucous layer. Or you say the mucosa. As simple as that. So those are the what? The layers of the what? Of the small intestine. Now, what about this mesentery? What are you going to say there? Just write that this is the outermost layer of the what? Of the small intestine. And it is made up of what? Of a double-walled structure called peritoneum. As simple as that. So the mesentery is made up of what? Of peritoneum. Although there is still something more, not even something, a lot of things about the mesentery, talking about the fan folds, so connecting to the posterior wall. But I don't want to disturb you with that. We're going to be talking about that some other times. And I don't want to be drawing more diagrams because we don't have the boards ourselves. Now, the next thing is what? Is the muscle layer. Just say the muscle layer contains some kind of nerve plexus called the myenteric plexus. Myenteric what? Myenteric plexus. So the muscle layer contains those plexus called the what? The myenteric plexus. And it's also divided into what? Into 2 layers. So this muscle layer is subdivided into what? Into 2 layers. The first one is called the outer longitudinal. Outer what? Outer longitudinal layer. And the second one is the inner circular. Inner what? Inner circular. As simple as that. Now, the next thing is what? Is the submucosal layer. So for the submucosal layer, we are going to tell you that what you are going to tell us there is that it contains nerves, blood vessels, lymphatic tissues, so etc. So listen to that. Nerves, blood vessels, even the plexus of the nerve that are found there, just like we call these myenteric plexus. And this submucosal layer, it contains a plexus of nerve called the what? Called the mesenteric, sorry, mesenteric rather. So mesenteric plexus. So the submucosal layer contains what? It contains the mesenteric plexus. Then it contains blood vessels and then lymphatic tissues. So as things like the Peyer's patches, the Peyer's patches, So we should talk about this on the lymphatic system. So I've been the lymphatic follicle. So some other time we'll be talking about it. So that is that about the submucosal layer. Just say it contains what? Network of blood vessels, nerves called the mesenteric plexus, and then it contains what? Lymphoid tissues. As simple as that. And finally, talking about this what? About this mucosa. This mucosa is the innermost layer of the what? Of the small intestine. And it presents with something called villi and microvilli. So it presents with the finger-like projections. Finger-like what? Finger-like projection. Called the what? Called the villi and the microvilli. And the microvilli. Now, this villi and the microvilli, their function is to do what? Is absorption. Absorb what? Absorption of nutrients. As simple as that. So if you want to go deeper, you are going to describe what the, the villi and the microvilli looks like. But we're going to be talking about that in some other videos. So they're just finger-like projections. Now their center, they have some kind of pillar there called the lacteal. So lacteal is a lymph tissue. So we're talking about that later. It absorbs milky lymph. So it is surrounded by blood capillaries which absorb the end product of carbohydrate protein. So that is the glucose and amino acid. So and some other things. So and after that, it is made up of what? Of cells called enterocytes. And those enterocytes are interpassed by goblet cells. So you can get these in the written format. You can put it in your description of the small intestine as well if you are asked in an examination condition. But don't worry, we're going to be dealing with these later. So that is that about the what? About the small intestine. And then you can add the tissue makeup of the innermost lining, which is the mucosa. So the mucosa is made of columnar epithelium. Yeah, it's columnar epithelium. So columnar epithelium. So as simple as that. So that is that about the what? About the mucosa. So the critical for this part, these layers rather. So the first layer is called the mesentery. So it is the outermost layer and it is made up of peritoneum. And after that, the outermost layer, which has two sub-layers, the outer longitudinal and the inner circular. And then it has some plexus of nerves called the what? The myenteric plexus. And then talking about the submucosa. The submucosa is what? It contains plexus of nerves called the Meissner's plexus. And then it contains blood vessel, lymph tissue, such as the Peyer's patches. And then the mucosal layer is the innermost lining, lined with what? Columnar epithelium. And then it presents with finger-like projection. In some other textbook, they call it a brush border enzyme. And that used to come in objective format whenever they want to ask you in the examination. Or they used to say the brush border enzyme of the small intestine is called what? So these are the guys right here. So and their function is to do what? Is to absorb nutrients into the blood. So into the portal first, then into the blood. So talking about that another time. So that is that about what? About the layers of the what? Of the small intestine. So the last thing is the arterial supply. So the arterial supply, you can guess that. So whenever you see the word enteral, it means something pertaining to the what? To the small intestine. So it gained its name from this entry. So mesenteric artery. So the arterial supply for the what? For the small intestine is what? Is superior mesenteric artery. Superior mesenteric artery. And the venous drainage will have the what? Superior mesenteric vein. And the nerve supply is sympathetic and parasympathetic. And talking about the function, it helps in digestion and absorption of nutrients. And that marks the end of this video. So if you have any question, you can drop it down in the comment section below. And I think that you really enjoyed the video. So if you do make sure you give this thumbs up. So make sure to share this with your friends so we can continue our own good work. Until some other time, I remain your favorite nurse, the Vascular. Have a good fire. All like that. Hi guys.